أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's an honor and a privilege to be spending a Friday night with all of you. I'd like to share a hadith that is mentioned in Nahjul Balagha. Nahjul Balagha is a book that was compiled by Sharif al-Radhi, one of our prominent scholars. And as many of you know, the book is divided up into 3 parts. And the book focuses primarily on the literary value of the sermons, letters, and sayings of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Tonight I want to share with you guys some reflections on saying number 289. So it's the last part of Nahjul Balagha, where the Imam alayhi salam shares the memory of someone that he admired among the companions of the Holy Prophet. But before I segue into the hadith, I'd like to mention a few points. Number one, when you examine the Holy Quran, there are many verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the duties of the Prophet. Prophethood, nubuwwah, is a job where you are essentially hired by God to fulfill certain tasks. And among the tasks of the Prophet ﷺ is that he facilitates, he teaches people how to purify their hearts. Now, the primary objective of all of our actions and our endeavors is what? To achieve nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why when you pray for what purpose? قُرْبَةً إِلَى اللَّهِ ta'ala. When you fast, you do it قُرْبَةً إِلَى اللَّهِ. You do it with the intention of seeking nearness to God. Now Allah Azza wa Jal is not a physical entity, so we're not talking about a physical closeness. We're talking about a closeness that involves the heart. Orienting the heart, positioning the heart in a way where it can enjoy this experience of being close to God. The word qalb in the Arabic language means heart. It's translated as heart. The word qalb means heart. But the word qalb is a word that actually is derived from a verb in the Arabic language. So it means heart, but the literal meaning of the word qalb comes from the verb which means to change. The word qalb comes from qalaba yaqlibu qalban. So the literal meaning of the word qalb is to change. And the reason why the Arabs use the word qalb to describe the heart is because the heart is always changing. And I think that many of us can attest to this. Our spirituality is always fluctuating. You know, some days you feel more spiritual than others. In the month of Ramadan, you feel closer to God. So you experience these ebbs and flows, these ups and downs. Now, I believe that the reason why many people who come to the masjid on a regular basis and who are religious and eventually they move away from religion, I think there's a reason for this. Because we don't know how to deal with the heart. The heart is very delicate. And sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves and our friends and family members, and we inadvertently push them away from religion. You know, there's an interesting hadith from the Holy Prophet ﷺ where he says, إِنَّ لِلْقَلْبِ إِقْبَالًا وَإِدْبَارًا. The heart experiences moments of advancement, it yearns for God, and it also experiences moments of withdrawal, it retreats. The Prophet says, فَإِنْ أَقْبَلَتْ فَتَنَفَّلُوا. When you have moments where you feel spiritual, take advantage of it. Do the extra deeds. Do the mustahabbat. وَإِنْ أَدْبَرَتْ. The Holy Prophet says, وَإِنْ أَدْبَرَتْ وَإِذَا أَدْبَرَتْ فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالْفَرِيضَةِ. If you don't feel spiritual, if you're not in the mood, as we say, stick to the wajibat. But what do we typically do in our communities? Every Thursday, rain or shine, we recite Dua Kumail. Every day we might force ourselves to do spiritual things that we're not in the mood to do. What happens if you do this? You're going to develop an aversion towards ibadah. You know, a similar, an analogy that I can give you is that if you want to improve your physique, if you want to get in shape, and you have certain days where you're motivated, you go to the gym and you do 7 workouts, and that's fine. You feel good, you're motivated. If you're motivated, push yourself that extra mile. You know, do that extra rep. Push yourself. But on the days that you're tired, that you feel exhausted, and you're not motivated, what's going to happen if you push yourself that extra mile? You're going to pull a muscle, right? You're going to pull a muscle. That's what happens if you don't respect the limits of your body. The heart, according to the Prophet, has limits. It's like a child. You have to be very delicate with it. If you see a child, you know, if you have a young daughter and she puts on the hijab, you know, bring the prayer mat and do jama'ah prayer with them. But if you sense that the child is not in the mood, don't pressure the child, because otherwise it will begin to hate worship. We have to treat our hearts like they're little children. We have to be conscious of this. So the Prophet says that the heart also experiences iqbal. It yearns for God, and there are moments where it retreats. So we have to be conscious of this. Now, one of the ways that we deal with the heart, and notice that the Prophet says, when you're not in the mood, stick with the wajibat. Meaning that you never have an excuse to abandon the wajibat. You can't say, you know, today I'm not really in the mood, so I'm not going to pray today. That's not allowed. When you're not in the mood, do the bare minimum, which is the wajibat. You never have an excuse to abandon your obligations. You know that? If you want to look at it, if I want to use an example that's relatable, to be healthy, you have to have a minimum calorie intake. Otherwise, you're going to get sick. In spirituality, you have a minimal calorie intake, which is your wajibat. If you don't fulfill your wajibat, you're going to get spiritually sick. That's the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum. Now, one of the most important things when it comes to developing and allowing our hearts to mature, because as I said, the heart is always changing. You're always going to have these ups and downs. What's our goal? Our goal is to ensure that these ups and downs are happening at a higher level. You want to get to a point where on your off days, you might not do one of the nawafil. On your off day, you might not pray Salatul Layl. But the problem is, on our off days, what do? We miss Salatul Fajr. We miss the wajibat on our off days. We need to elevate ourselves to the point where on your off day, you're reading 2 pages of the Quran and doing half of the nawafil. That's your off day. You want to elevate yourself. But how do we do that? The verse that I began with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. Allah says those who are conscious of this position of God and they prohibit themselves from their illegitimate desires. You know, we all have desires, brothers and sisters. There are things that you want to do in life. You have desires, you have things that you're passionate about. But not everything that you desire is permissible. Just because you have a desire, it's not licensed to act upon it. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that those who are conscious of God and who resist their illegitimate desires, for them is what? For them is paradise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Jannah is for these types of people. The reward is so great. Why? Because the struggle is great. It's not easy to resist temptation. Allah says, those who know me and resist their lowly desires, for them is paradise. Jannah is not for everyone. Jannah is for people who struggle, who strive. In fact, this instruction to curb your desires. You know, unfortunately, we live in an era where we're taught that life is all about maximizing your pleasure and minimizing your pain. Everything is about indulgence. If you go on Instagram, everyone is posting stuff about what they're eating, what they're wearing. It's all dunya. It's all consumption. It's all about indulgence. It's all about following and fulfilling any desire that comes to you. But you find that the Quran warns us. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He speaks to Dawood. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah 38, ayah number 26, what does He say? Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. O Dawood, we have made you my representative on earth. He's a king. And you know, brothers and sisters, kings, people who are in power, they have a tendency to do what? To indulge. You know, to live it up, as we say. Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. We have given you power over others. Fahkum bayna an-nas bil haqq. Judge people based on truth. Be fair. And then what does Allah tell Dawood, who's ma'soom? Allah says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعِ الْهَوَى فَيُضِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Don't follow your desires. Otherwise you will be directed away from the path of God. Even Dawood. You know, you can't say that you don't need advice, that you don't need to be warned about succumbing to your illegitimate desires. Even someone like Dawood, Allah tells him, don't follow your desires. Exercise some restraint. Exercise some self-restraint. Now, the hadith that I want to share with you, as I said, it's saying number what? Does anyone remember? I mentioned it. 289, for those of you who are awake. 289 in Nahjul Balagha. So if you look up the sayings at the end of Nahjul Balagha, number 289. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam shares with us the memory of someone that he admired. You know, brothers and sisters, we all admire Ali ibn Abi Talib. We all sing his praise. But the question here is, who does Imam Ali admire? Who does he admire? What qualities are praiseworthy in the eyes of Ali ibn Abi Talib? So the hadith says, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, كان لي أخ فيما مضى كان لي فيما مضى أخ في الله. The Imam says that I used to have, and he mentions these words during his khilafah. So we're talking about almost 25 years after the death of the Prophet. He says, I used to have a brother in faith. Now, this brother in faith is not mentioned. So Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is not talking about a biological brother that he had. He's speaking about a brother in faith. You know, sometimes your brother in faith is closer to you than your biological brother. The Imam says, I used to have a brother in faith. The commentators of Nahjul Balagha, they speculate who Amir al-Mu'mineen is talking about. Most likely it's not the Prophet, and I'll explain to you why it's probably not the Prophet. Some of the commentators of Nahjul Balagha, they say it's probably Abu Dhar or Ammar ibn Yasir or Salman or Miqdad, one of these elite companions of the Prophet. But in any case, what's more important is not the name. It's the qualities that Imam Ali alayhi salam admires in a person. And if you want to know if you are someone who is beloved to Ali ibn Abi Talib, you have to ask yourself, do I have any of these qualities in me? So what does the Imam say? كان لي فيما مضى أخ في الله. I used to have, and it seems that at this time he had passed away. The Imam says, I used to have a brother in faith. وَكَانَ يُعْظِمُهُ فِي عَيْنِ صِغَرُ الدُّنْيَا فِي عَيْنِ. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, what made him great, listen to the expression of the Imam. He says, what made him great in my eyes was the fact that the dunya was very small in his eyes. What a beautiful description. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he admires people that are not obsessed with this material world. He admires people who consider this dunya and all of its luxuries and comforts as something it's not a big deal. What made him great in my eyes is that the dunya was very small in his eyes. Is the dunya small in our eyes, brothers and sisters? We might say it is, but I'll ask you the following question. On Black Friday, if you stand in line, if you're Majnoon, right? And you get a tent and you sit for 17 hours so you can get $15 off of a TV. And then say you wait in line and you don't get the TV. You know, there's a stampede. Are you more upset about not getting that TV? Are you more upset about that than missing Salatul Fajr? Some of us, we miss Salatul Fajr every day and it's like, it's not a big deal. Are you more upset about, losing some money, if you drop money or you lose something that's valuable to you? Are you more upset about that, or are you more upset about missing out on an opportunity to do a good deed, something that's pleasing to Allah? So ask yourself, am I more upset about missing Salatul Fajr or missing 50% off at the mall? If the answer is that, and you have to be honest with yourself. بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. You know yourself. If the answer is no, I'm more agitated by the material things that I lose, then no. The dunya is very great in your eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, what does He say in Surah Al-Hadid? لِكَيْ لَا, in life, you get things and you lose things. That's life. You're going to make money, you're going to lose money. You're going to be healthy and you're going to lose your health. Allah's going to give you children and God forbid, you're going to also lose loved ones. This life is all about acquisition and loss. But what should your mindset be? Allah says, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. Don't be too disappointed on what you miss out on. This life is very brief. It's going to pass by very quickly. I've never met, I like to talk to the elderly, people who are in their 70s and 80s, because they have experience. I've never met a single person who's in their 70s and 80s who's told me, Sheikh, life has been really slow. All of them, universally, they say what? Just the other day I graduated high school. Just the other day I got married. Just the other day I had my children. All of them say that life passes by very quickly. And subhanAllah, believe me, for those who are young, the older you get, it's as though it's going faster. It's as though someone's pushing a fast forward button. The years start to go by very quickly. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. Don't be too disappointed on what you lose. And do not, وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. And don't get too excited about what you gain. Because everything that you acquire, everything that you gain, whether it's money, whether it's gifts, even people, don't get too attached to people. Be kind, respect people. Treat them with dignity, but don't get attached. Because I've never seen two people get buried together in the same grave. You're on your own. So the Imams alayhi salam, the first quality of this person that Amir al-Mu'mineen admires is that the dunya was small in his eyes. Don't be too obsessed about what you miss out on. And then the Imam alayhi salam, he says, وَكَانَ خَارِجًا مِّن سُلْطَانِ بَطْنِهِ فَلَا يَشْتَهِي مَا لَا يَجِدْ وَلَا يُكْثِرُ إِذَا وَجَدْ. The Imam says his stomach did not control him. His stomach did not control him. He was not, some of us, our lives revolve around food. That's all we think about. I've been with people, after you have breakfast with them, they say, so what should we do for lunch? Habibi, we just ate breakfast. They have a very food-centric life. Everything is about food. And they have this insatiable desire. It's not just about food, it's just this appetite for things. Right? And especially during this time of year, this is the season of capitalism, right? I think it's ironic that the way that the West and the world unfortunately celebrates the birth of Jesus Christ, they celebrate it by buying things that they don't need. Right? Isa alayhi salam, he was a zahid. If there's any prophet that embodied indifference to the world, it was Isa alayhi salam. He lived such a simple life. Today, in his name, people are indulging. They're spending money on things that they don't need. This obsession with the dunya has become the theme of the birth of a man who is detached from the dunya. وَكَانَ خَارِجًا مِّن سُلْطَانِ بَطْنِ فَلَا يَشْتَهِي مَا لَا يَجِدْ. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, this person, what made him so admirable to me is that he did not yearn for what he did not get. I see people on social media, especially Instagram. Instagram is a really strange place. People they feel depressed, they spend an hour and a half, looking at the lives of the rich and famous, right? They spend so much time yearning to have, this article of clothing, to drive that car. Our minds are so fixated on what? What other people have. What I don't have and what other people have. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says, this man, whether it's Abu Dhar or Ammar or Miqdad, whoever they may be, فَلَا يَشْتَهِي مَا لَا يَجِدْ. He didn't desire things that he didn't have. Meaning, he was very frugal when it came to his dunya. We're the opposite. We're ambitious when it comes to dunya, and we're very what? We're very zahid when it comes to our religion. I do the bare minimum when it comes to my relationship with Allah, but when it comes to my dunya, I only want the best. We want to excel in our dunya, but we're satisfied with mediocrity when it comes to our deen. وَلَا يُكْثِرُ إِذَا وَجَدْ. And whatever he has, he doesn't seek to get more of it. Meaning what? Imam says, I admire the contentment of this person. Be content with what you have. If you want to be happy, be grateful for what you have. Stop going on social media and saying, oh, look what she has, look what this guy has, look at how big their house is. Oh, they went to Paris 6 times. Oh, I wish I had their lives. We're always wishing for things that we don't have, and we forget to express gratitude to Allah for the things that He's given us. You know, brothers and sisters, tonight, almost all of you, you're going to go to bed with a stomach full of food and a shelter over your head. I don't think there's anyone here who's going to go to sleep hungry, and I don't think there's anyone here who's going to sleep in the streets. You're all going to have shelter, and you're all going to have bellies full of food. Do you know what that means? That means you're doing better than over 800 million people around the world. So we need to stop complaining. We need to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Imam says this person was content. And then the Imam says, so what was the first quality? This person, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, admired them because the dunya was small in their eyes. Their stomachs did not control them. They were content. And then the Imam says, كَانَ أَكْثَرُ دَهْرِهِ صَامِتًا. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, and this man, he was almost always silent. Most of the time he was silent. You know, brothers and sisters, silence is something that many of us don't practice. We think that we always have to be talking. You know, notice that Amir al-Mu'mineen doesn't say he was a prolific speaker, he used to speak so much. The Imam says, I admired the fact that he was mostly silent. You know, there's a saying that a wise man once said nothing. Right? We always think that wise people have to always talk. A wise man once said nothing. The problem, brothers and sisters, is that we talk too much. We talk too much. You know, even if we're not backbiting, you know, the problem is not only do we talk too much, we sin with our tongues. And I have to tell you that my favorite justification, you know, sometimes you sit with people, you know, you talk about the weather, the stock market, sports, and then when you run out of topics, what happens? We really get into the real feast, which is ghibah, right? That's the real feast of our gatherings. We start talking about this person and that person. Oh, did she invite you to my wedding? Did he invite you to my engagement? And then we start talking. And we start speculating, and we have all these theories about people. And then if you're a religious person and you say that, you know, maybe we shouldn't talk about people. You know, let's change the subject. You know, some people, what do? Oh, no, I'll say this to their face. As if, in that case, yeah, now it's halal because you'll say it to their face. Therefore, it's not ghibah. This is a misconception. You know, if you insult someone behind their back and you say, but I'll say it to their face, saying it to their face is also haram. Because there's another sin called ida'ul mu'min. It's haram to hurt people, to hurt their feelings. So when does this happen? When we don't guard our tongues. We don't guard our tongues. You know, there was once an alim, a scholar. He was sitting at a gathering, and unfortunately, you know, sometimes even mu'ammameen, they start to talk. So he was sitting, he was a very noble scholar, committed to tazkiyatun nafs. One of the Hawza students, one of these clerics, started to backbite. This alim was not the one who backbited. He was just there, and he gets up and he leaves. They ask him, Maulana, where are you going? He says that listening to even a part of this ghibah, I've gone back 40 days in my spiritual development. Just being in this atmosphere. He wasn't the one who was backbiting. Sitting even for a few moments with people who are slandering and backbiting, he says, it has set me back 40 days in my spiritual development. We need to learn how to be silent. You know, in our society, if you're silent, you're considered an awkward person. The Imam says, this was what I admired. You know, even Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, who we consider to be the most eloquent person. You know, most of these ahadith that we have from Ali ibn Abi Talib, do you know when they were spoken? Not during the time of the Prophet. During the time of his khilafah. During the time of the Prophet, Imam Ali alayhi salam wasn't speaking. He was listening. He was silent. It's a virtue to be silent. You don't always need to speak. And if you want to speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, is it true? Is it true? Sometimes we say things and we haven't even verified. We just hear and we pass along the message. Is it true? If it's true, should you say it? No, not everything that's true has to be spoken. There are a lot of things that are true. Doesn't mean that you have to mention them. Number 2, is it kind? Is it akhlaqi to mention this thing? And if it's true and if it's an akhlaqi thing, is it necessary? Is it necessary? You know, when Allah speaks about the atmosphere of Jannah, what does Allah say? لا يسمع فيها لغوا ولا كذابا. People in paradise, they don't lie, so there's no sinful talk, but there's also no what? There's no laghu. Laghu is not sinful. Laghu is just useless talk. Don't speak unless it's necessary. فَإِنْ قَالَ بَذَّ الْقَائِلِينَ. The Imam says this person was mostly silent, but when he spoke, he would silence other speakers, meaning that he was very eloquent. You know, just because someone doesn't speak frequently doesn't mean that they're not eloquent. You know, for many years, especially before ISIS entered Iraq, many people used to criticize Sayyid al-Sistani, you know, the Marji' al-Najaf. What was their criticism? How come he doesn't come out and speak? Because we think the role of a scholar is just to talk. But do you know, brothers and sisters, the silence of Sayyid al-Sistani is just as powerful as his words. You know, sometimes just the fact that he doesn't talk a lot means that when he speaks, it carries weight. You think if Sayyid al-Sistani was talking every day and he was interviewing with CNN and all these networks, do you think his words would have carried weight? It wouldn't carry weight. He speaks when it's necessary. And this shows how much control he has over his nafs. You know, when you have that kind of power, it's very tempting to speak. When one fatwa can mobilize millions and millions of people, when you have that type of power, it's very tempting to speak. But it takes a great amount of self-control to remain silent. And this is why these types of scholars preserved a lot of bloodshed in Iraq and even around the world. When he would speak, he would silence other speakers. وَنَقَعَ غَلِيلَ السَّائِلِينَ. And whenever people would ask him questions, so Imam is speaking about this person, of this brother of faith that he admired. Whenever people would ask questions, he would quench their thirst. Meaning he would listen to the question and he would give a suitable answer to that question. He wouldn't answer anything halfway. He would give full, comprehensive answers. But to be able to answer comprehensively, you have to be what? You have to be a good listener. You can't answer people's questions thoroughly if you're not listening attentively. وَكَانَ ضَعِيفًا مُسْتَضْعَفًا. Imam says that he appeared very feeble and weak. This person, whether it's Ammar ibn Yasir or Abu Dhar, the Imam says, if you look at this person, this man, he appeared weak and feeble. فَإِنْ جَاءَ الْجِدْ فَهُوَ لَيْثٌ غَابٌ وَصِلٌّ وَادٌ. But when it was time to fight, he was like a lion who emerged from the jungle or a serpent that has come out from the valley. Which means what? You know, brothers and sisters, there are some people that don't know how to balance their anger. It takes a unique person to know when to be gentle and when to be assertive. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says this person, what made him so unique was that he knew when to be gentle. He had a very gentle demeanor that if you look at him, you can't harm a fly if you were to see him. But when Islamic values are being compromised, when there is injustice in the community, that same person who's gentle and kind becomes very assertive and firm and steadfast. And we have to learn this quality. The problem with you and I is that we're assertive and we're aggressive when we should be gentle. And then vice versa. So for example, if I come home and my wife or my mother cooks a meal that I don't like, this is when I become a lion who's emerged from the jungle, or a serpent who has come from the valley. I become very angry, very assertive. But this is a moment where you should be gentle. That you should have a very gentle demeanor. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, on many occasions, he would come home and he would ask, some of his wives, one of his wives, is there anything to eat? Anything for dinner? The Prophet has, a very long day dealing with kuffar, munafiqeen, a lot of problems. You want to come home to a nice warm meal. He comes home and his wife says, I haven't made anything. Can you imagine? I ask the respected husbands, what would happen if you come home from a long day of work and your wife says, I didn't make anything? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you'll divorce her 3 times on the spot. You'll lose it. You'll become, not like a lion, you'll become like a monkey maybe, jumping up and down. You will try to exercise what? Your power. But what would the Prophet do? The Prophet would say, it's okay, I'll do a mustahab fast today. Because with a mustahab fast, if you haven't done anything to invalidate your fast, you have until Maghrib to make the niyyah. So for example, during winter break, say no one bothered to cook anything for you, or you woke up at 1 p.m. because you were up watching Netflix all night. You woke up and there's only 3 hours until Maghrib. If you haven't done anything to break your fast and you don't have any qadha fast to make up, you can make your niyyah to fast a mustahab fast. That's what the Prophet did. The Prophet never got angry. When would the Prophet get angry? When there was injustice. When Islam was in danger. So knowing when to exercise your anger. Some of us, we get more upset about the fact that you're not getting the meal that you wanted than what's happening in Yemen, right? You're less upset about genocide than you are about, not getting the meal that you requested. Unfortunately, that's how we are. And then the Imam says, لا يدلي بحجة حتى يأتي قاضية. He would not put forth an argument unless it was decisive. He would do his homework. You and I, we talk without really thinking. He would do his homework. When he would put forth an argument, it would be comprehensive, thorough, decisive. وَكَانَ لَا يَلُومُ أَحَدًا عَلَى مَا يَجِدُ الْعُذْرَ فِي مِثْلِهِ حَتَّى يَسْمَعْ اعْتِذَارًا. If he was able to make excuses for people, he would do so. Brothers and sisters, we're very judgmental. When someone makes a mistake, we don't make 70 excuses, we make 70 accusations. Unfortunately, with people, if you do 1,000 good deeds and you do one thing wrong, they'll forget about the 1,000 and only focus on what you did wrong. That's the nature of people. But Allah, look how Kareem Allah is. With Allah, if you do one good deed, He'll forget about 1,000 sins. But with people, you do 1,000 good deeds and you commit one sin and that's it. They consider you to be Iblis. Right? So the Imam alayhi salam, he says, this man was always trying to find excuses for people. If there was a way to excuse someone, he would do it. He would be very strict with himself, but he would look for any possibility to exonerate people for their wrongdoing. وَكَانَ لَا يَشْكُو وَجَعًا إِلَّا عِنْدَ بُرِّهِ. he would never complain about his sickness. You know, there are some people that they whine all the time. You know, there's a saying that says, you know, everyone hates whiners, right? Even whiners, right? Everyone hates whiners, even whiners. He didn't whine and complain. If he wasn't feeling well, he would take the medicine that he needed to, and then he wouldn't burden other people with his problems. He was trying to alleviate others from their problems. وَكَانَ يَقُولُ مَا يَفْعَلْ وَلَا يَقُولُ مَا لَا يَفْعَلْ. He would always do what he says, and he would never say something that he would not do. And this is something that we also have to learn. There needs to be authenticity between what we do and what we say, and what we say and what we do. And especially in our own lives, in our family lives. Inshallah, when you guys have children one day, you can day and night tell your children to pray on time. But if you as a parent are not doing your salah on time, it's not going to happen. You have to practice what you preach. So Amir al-Mu'mineen says, one of the things that I admired about this man is that he practiced what he preached. He would never talk unless he was the first one to act. وَكَانَ إِذَا غُلِبَ عَلَى الْكَلَامِ لَمْ يُغْلَبْ عَلَى السُّكُوتِ. The Imam says, if there was anyone that could surpass him in speaking, meaning that they were more eloquent, there is no one that can surpass him in silence. وَكَانَ عَلَى مَا يَسْمَعْ أَحْرَصُ مِنْهُ عَلَى أَن يَتَكَلَّمَ. The Imam says this person was more interested in listening than speaking. How many people do you know like that? They're more interested in listening than speaking. You know, most people that you interact with, as you're speaking, you think that they're listening, but they're just waiting for you to finish talking so they can say what they want to say. They're more interested in you shutting up so they can mention their point. So when you think that they're listening, there's elevator music going on in their minds. You know, when are they going to stop talking? We don't listen. But Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib says, I admired this person because he was more interested in listening than speaking. And then, this is the point that I wanted to make. The whole reason I mentioned this hadith is to get to this point. وَكَانَ إِذَا بَدَهُ أَمْرَانِ يَنْظُرُ أَيُّهُمَا أَقْرَبُ إِلَى الْهَوَى فَيُخَالِفُ. The Imam then speaks about how this person used to make decisions. How do you typically make decisions? You look at what's going to benefit you. And usually what's going to benefit your dunya. That's how you make your decisions in life. The Imam says whenever he would be confronted with a choice, whenever he had to make a decision between two things, what would he do? You and I, what do? We always go with the path of comfort and ease. But what did he do? He would ask himself, he would see, what is his heart more inclined towards? What does his nafs want? And he would do the opposite. He would do the opposite. That's how you develop your spirituality. When you're confronted with a choice. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. Imagine you have a sibling or a relative that you haven't contacted in a long time. You're not really in touch with them, but you have an obligation to maintain ties with them. And you want to decide whether to send them a text message or call them. Right? We live in a time where it's really awkward to call people now. Your nafs wants to do what? It wants to take the easy way. I'll just say salam, text message, and then when they respond, I'll act like I didn't read it. Right? When you're confronted with a decision, ask yourself, what does my nafs want? If you want to take the easy way out, do the opposite. Pick up the phone and call. Force yourself on certain occasions to go against what you desire. So for example, you sleep in a very comfortable bed 7 days a week, right? One day, or maybe even once a month, sleep on the floor. You're not going to die. Sleep on the floor. Because brothers and sisters, if you have little kids and you always give that child everything that it wants, what's going to happen? You're creating a monster, right? Right? You're going to have Fir'aun part 2, right? If you give a kid whatever they want, you're creating a monster. And the same thing, the same principle applies to your heart, to your soul. If you're always giving your nafs everything that it wants, it's always going to be a nafsul ammara. And it's going to be more aggressive. Therefore, you have to make it a point every once in a while to go against your desires, even if they're halal desires. You want to eat a delicious meal. Your mom cooked 7 types of tabbouleh, pizza. Especially when you look on Instagram, sometimes I see what you guys post. 17-course meals. One day out of the month, resist. Tell yourself that I want to eat this pizza and this 6-layered cheese lasagna, whatever it is. My nafs wants it, but I'm not going to do it. Why? Because I want to train my nafs who's in charge. That the aql is in charge. I'm not a slave of my desires. If you start to do this and make this a regular practice, you'll have more control over your nafs. Because if you can start resisting the halal pleasures, it will be easier for you to start resisting what? The haram. And at the end of the hadith, what does the Imam say? فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِهَذِهِ الْخَلَائِقِ فَالْزَمُوهَا وَتَنَافَسُوا فِيهَا. The Imam says, try to acquire these qualities, the qualities that he mentioned. The fact that the dunya should be small in your eyes. The fact that your stomach should not dictate your life. That you should be content. That you should learn the virtue of silence. That you should be fair in judging others. That you should make excuses. That if you're confronted with a decision that you should go against your nafs. The Imam says, try to acquire these qualities. Now when you read this hadith, you say, Sheikh, that's too much. That's a lot to change in myself. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِيعُوا. If you're not able to acquire all of these virtues, فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ أَخْذَ الْقَلِيلِ خَيْرٌ مِّن تَرْكِ الْكَثِيرِ. If you can't adopt all of the qualities that the Imam mentioned, then at least try to acquire some of them. Because acquiring something is better than abandoning everything. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us and guide us and illuminate our hearts with the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala